Apologies to the subscribers of the Bob and Kel Clever Cast and the Scofflaws who get it for free for the fact that our Brush with Greatness Part 2 had been tantrically delayed due to vacations and illnesses, mainly mine, and a birthday, my grandson's and my own. Rocking an ottoman today, befitting the new age, and glad to put all gimmicks aside until next week so that we can make way. Brush with Greatness Part 2, our special guest, the Minneapolis-based former local and national network correspondent, cable TV host, raconteur, bon vivant, boulevardier, Jim Leinfelder. We welcome him.
Me. Yes.
We welcome him. We've already had an on-site kind of run-through of the chemistry between this group, but we've yet to hear the brush with greatness that I've been leading people to believe will rock their world. I should also say in your defense that were you not the first journalist to break the news of the Mississippi River bridge collapse?
I don't know if I was the first. I was certainly among the first on the scene because I was at hurling practice, which is an Irish sport that no one cares about. But and I whipped over there after I got the call from I guess New York. Anyway, I got there soon enough that I could still get on the 10th Avenue Bridge and look down at the carnage, which ended shortly thereafter. The police pushed everybody off that bridge.
Yeah.
And I was a step, but of course you have remembered over all these years what has become my catchphrase associated with that tragedy.
Well, you were on the air live nationally and internationally with Keith Olbermann on MSNBC that evening.
Yes.
And by the way, am I hearing some sort of background crosstalk or something? What's going on? Does anybody hear that?
I hear a little something.
Any idea what it is?
I'm all alone except for the dog.
Okay.
I have lawnmowers going off in the distance. I'll mute myself to see if that helps.
All right, thank you. What I was going to say was the fact that only 13 people died that day. Now think of that. Think of maybe how they died. Cars fall on them from the bridge, or they're in the car and they drown in the river. I mean, that was god awful. The fact that only that happened to only 13 people was what you termed, and the term that you birthed with Keith Olbermann that evening was the title of my goth punk band after that called Grim Miracle. You called it a grim miracle. What I'm even more impressed with,
he liked that,
if you don't mind my saying so, is that you are the author of a Confucius style quotation which I'm if you don't want me to reference it, I'm glad not to. But if ever you guys or anyone you know hears this credo, this truism of Confucius style quality, you'll know where it came from. Jim Leinfelder is credited with authoring this one. Show me an attractive woman and I'll show you a guy who's tired of fucking her.
You know, I think I've absorbed that from the culture, but yeah, that got quoted to you by Platnick, right?
Correct.
Yeah. I've used it to console men who feel like they have been denied what others have not. And I've tried to explain to them in that that crude aphorism that it doesn't make any difference in the long run.
You know, though, it was the first thing I thought of when I heard the news that Tom Brady and Giselle were divorcing. What other reason could there be?
Yeah,
really.
There you go. That's how you explain that. Yeah,
that may be the most
it may be from
example.
Maybe
Huh?
from Giselle's perspective, who knows? But
Yeah.
well,
Well, that's
it cuts
true.
both ways.
It could cut both ways, but we prefer the chauvinist version.
As
Because
that is our
this
default setting.
this podcast is a home game for the male persuasion.
There
Yes.
you go.
Now, you were in a, if I'm not mistaken, co-ed setting for your brush with greatness. So why don't you share it with us now that I've given it several weeks worth of build up?
Well, what's particularly interesting about it anyway, to me anyway, is that I had this brush with greatness, 40 years ago? But I didn't know that it had been captured and made immortal until about 2 weeks ago. When I looked it up on YouTube, and I don't even remember what stimulated me. I think it just showed up in my feed on YouTube, and I thought, oh, that concert was
what
so
were you
great.
doing in the 80s?
Yeah.
How did you spend the 80s that the importance of what you'd been involved in was at its height, really?
Well, because I was in the news business and we had monitors that we were, of course, supposed to have tuned to CNN, but they were always on MTV. And after I was at this particular concert, I saw the eventual video that I was aware was being shot that night. And all I saw, sitting there at my desk was a shot from the performer's perspective. And I was cut out of that shot. My roommate who I was there with, he was in the shot wearing conveniently an MTV t-shirt. And so for all these years, I thought, well, I was just cropped out. But I later learned that I was in the Dancing in the Dark video with Courtney Cox.
Wow.
And
what do you think of that?
That's
if you doubt me, let's start slow.
Wow.
Can you see that? That's
Who
me.
is that young man? Woo!
Yeah. And see there's 3 women there, right? I always thought Courtney, who I didn't know at the time was an actress, I just thought she was this gorgeous woman I was near. But all 3 of these women were actors. And Bruce could have plucked any one of them from the crowd and consequently obscurity and made them stars.
Yeah, could have changed their lives.
And so here you go. Here's a tighter shot.
You're going to have to bring it back toward your face. So there you go. Yeah, just like that. Thank you. And so she's right there and you're right behind her.
There's my chin.
Okay.
And then here you go.
Courtney is convulsed in anticipation.
I think Courtney was wearing her hair like I do these days. That's crazy.
And then there's Jim. And so if you Google Dancing in the Dark Bruce Springsteen video, you'll see the finished product and you can look for
enjoy it. Yeah.
Jim Leinfelder.
Jim, what was your title? What were you doing then?
I can't remember. I was either at, oh gosh, I'm not sure. I might have been at any of 3 places. I could have been at WCCO TV. I might have been riding the assignment desk at KSTP TV. Or if it was a little later into the 80s, I would have been at the Twin Cities Reader.
Oh, okay.
So
all around.
Yeah. Those are the best days at the Twin Cities Reader. And
Jim would sub for me 86 to 91, I want to say, or 86 to 93, something like that. He was he was no longer with the Reader,
right?
Nor was I at the time, although I was given a column to write about sports. Anyway, we referred to him as our former Reader writer friend, and he would come in and sub for me when I would go on vacation or was ill something. Or
I mean, that was a highlight. I mean, I never have gotten to do that any other time. Well, except in Oregon, but it was boring. I was host of Oregon Considered.
Who was the producer? Did Kenny show up to produce for you on those days?
Yeah. Yes. Thank God. Yeah.
Hey, Kurt, I have another technical question. Should I be seeing myself in a pain at the top of this bar above the screen where I see Jim's face now? Because I don't see myself anywhere on the screen.
It doesn't matter. I'm recording on this end and you look fine.
Yeah, I see you.
Okay.
Yeah, I see you
Okay,
too.
good. All right, thank you. I just want to make sure that either my laptop wasn't
Oh, sorry. Go see him.
screwed up or what the deal was.
You probably just
And,
need to toggle something, Bob, but you'll figure it out later.
There goes
I need to
Bailey.
what?
Toggle something, you know? You probably just have to
Toggle.
flip a switch.
Does that mean like hit it on the side like it's a vending machine?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay. Who is the man's best friend there on the Leinfelder couch?
That was Bailey, and she the women have just arrived back home, and so she has now made her way out to the backyard.
Okay.
So
Tell
she
us
won't-
about the other separated bursts, such as the one with Oprah.
Okay. Got it right here.
What do you think of that?
That was us at her end of the year party. It had become so pro forma for Oprah to win daytime Emmys that she quit going to them. And I was going out with a lovely woman who worked for Oprah. And I got to go to 2 of these end of the year parties, which is kind of a weak way to put it, a party. I mean, these things were Romanesque. I mean, these were worthy of a Caesar. You know,
Was
like
this the height of her local Chicago experience before she went national?
no, she was national, but
Okay.
she was very much a Chicago presence. This was in that building that's got a shopping mall on the lower levels, and then it's a hotel higher up, and then it's condos. And I think Oprah had like 2 levels of condo in that building, kind of down toward the water tower area.
Right.
And maybe it is the water tower, but anyway, I'll give you one example of how sumptuous this was. There were people employed for the evening up on tables raised up to be human statues all evening and striking various poses. And yet, amongst all these sumptuous canapes and drinks, God bless her, she also served White Castle hamburgers, which I appreciate. And the second year, I got to sit at her table, which was
the White Castle thing a promotional gesture they paid for? Or was it something that she threw in to symbolize her interest in the lower to middle class? What was that about, do you think?
My take was it was the latter, that it was a little sort of a campy addition to all the fancy food. And because I remember remarking about it to her and telling her how much I appreciate it and how much I've enjoyed White Castle since I was a boy when they were a dime. And she resonated to that. So
I don't want to be crass, but we know Oprah as being large Oprah and small Oprah. So
yeah,
she might have scarfed down a lot of those, but she looked pretty svelte in your picture.
Yeah, she was not too long after her marathon days. So she was pretty lithe. Yeah.
Nice.
That was young Oprah, the one we saw in the picture with Jim.
Gotcha.
Yes, she's
And that was young Jim as well.
Indeed. Yeah. And this
don't you find it amazing?
Here's who I was with.
Wow.
Oh, that was your date for the evening?
Yeah. For a couple of years. A great person.
Did one of those women provide you with the aphorism for show me?
No, I would stress absolutely not in that case.
Okay, good.
It was the 80s. There could have been some crazy times.
It was more of my those are usually my observations of other guys, but here's one thing that happened at the table. The following year, the year after that picture was taken, Oprah was sitting with were women who seemed to be her mandarins, her advisors. I really wasn't quite sure who all of them were. And then myself and the woman who took me there. And anyway, at some point they were talking about an incident where Tom Selleck was on Rosie O'Donnell's show, and she kind of sandbagged him about being an NRA guy or something like that. And then, and I was just sitting there impassively listening, and she turned to me, Oprah turned to me and asked me, well, Jim, what do you think about that? And I said, well, it depends on her goal. If her goal was to in some way change Tom Selleck's mind about the Second Amendment or, owning a gun, probably unsuccessful. But if it was to fluff up her bona fides as a liberal host of a talk show, probably was a success. So, and to which Oprah agreed. So
the fact that you showed us a picture with you and two completely different physically members of the opposite sex leads me to my Confucian quality quotation that I often inform other men of when they come to me with their problems.
Get ready, listeners.
And it's not obscene. It's not obscene at all. It goes like this: all cats are gray in the dark.
Ah, very good.
So
that is much more Confucian.
You could have taken Oprah home that evening. You could have taken, and probably did, your date home that evening. I mean, you told me some stories the last time I was in town about your social circulations. Night of the Penguin related in the 1980s.
Oh my, yes.
And
the early days of the Penguin. Yeah.
Alcohol fueled bacchanals.
Yeah, those were the one in particular was enabled by the fact that the International Market Square, which is the building we held the party in originally, that's why it was called Night of the Penguin, because that used to be the Munsingware plant, and now it's a fancy design center. Anyway, it was still under construction in the upper floors, so it left a lot of fallow ground that could be adapted for any number of uses.
How long did that tradition last, and why did it die out?
How
is it that Twin Cities journalists suddenly were no longer interested in inebriation and extramarital sex?
Well, I think part of it was a lot of the people who threw the party got married and started reproducing, which wrecks everything, and I moved away. I'm not saying that's a factor, but I moved to Oregon, but it went on for about a decade, I think.
Yeah.
It was in a lot of other venues besides International Market Square. It was in the old Young Quinlan building after it was, vacated, but before it was converted into, I think it was the Polo store for a while.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of a wreckage on the inside, but part of the charm of it. And so we had all these people in there, they're dancing away. And what we didn't realize was on the floor was hardened old glue that held the carpet down. But when you dance on it, it reverts back to glue.
Sticky stuff.
So there were a lot of ruined shoes.
Yeah. Well, if I understand you correctly, and in my memory of our anecdotes we shared on my recent visit are still in effect, much of your brain space is still occupied, if I'm not mistaken, by memories of the female journalists on hand at these gatherings. Is that fair to say?
Oh yeah, I mean they were resplendent at their certainly near the zenith of attractiveness and bacchanalian tendencies.
Yeah.
And so
were these Lutherans?
Well, it's Minnesota, so I'm sure there was a pretty good percentage. Yeah.
Okay. So backsliding Lutherans.
Yeah. Although, in fairness, in the journalism business, especially television, a lot of them are from out of town.
There you go.
So who knows?
Well, I don't understand why it hasn't been revived. Apparently, there are other
there was talk
in the culture.
There was talk.
Huh?
There was recent
Yeah.
talk of it, but only
Okay.
amongst us, and the people just couldn't gin up much
Right.
energy for
Right.
revisiting the Penguin. But yeah, why aren't the young kids in the biz today not putting on something like that? Why are they not emulating us?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
It could be that the puppy uppers and doggy downers have changed,
yeah,
since that time, and with the parsing of genders now and the appeal of certain identities has distorted the original plan.
yeah, things were
That's all I can
simpler
figure.
back in our
Yeah.
day.
Oh yeah.
You
Heck
know,
yeah. This is what it was all about. This is very simple.
yeah, and
I remember
getting all
somebody
those.
asking me, "So what are you and so and so going to do for the rest of the day?" And I didn't even say a word. I just did this.
And
Very
did they look
primal,
back
Bob. Very
blankly?
primal.
Did they have a
What's
confused
that?
look?
What's that greasy spoon at the corner of? It's across the street from the Lex. We're talking Snelling and Grand, I think. Is
Oh,
it a lamplighter or something like that, or the something lighter?
That could be the lamplighter room. Yeah.
Okay, that's where I was asked. So what are you guys doing for the rest of the day?
wait, I
I
don't
must
know
have
the
had
lamp.
my
That was a
mouthful, and I'm a
topless. That
stickler
was
for
a
not.
topless waitresses, right?
Oh, wow.
Yes.
By the Lex. Wow. I missed
That's a
that. How did I miss that?
that's a great chicken pot pie at the Lex. I missed the Lex.
Indeed.
Bob went for the food.
It's much improved.
I'm a man of extraordinary appetites, whether it's chicken pot pie at the Lex
Or
or obscene hand gestures across the street at the Lamplighter. And you know what? That was catty corner from probably St. Paul's final Blockbuster. There used to be a Blockbuster there. I don't
Yeah,
know what it is
yes.
now, but
It was directly across the street from the Lex.
yeah,
Yes.
can't find. I don't think there is a Blockbuster left anywhere in the country.
There was
But
something recently said or reported about the last Blockbuster somewhere.
yeah, there was a documentary made about it. I think it may be in Oregon somewhere.
That wouldn't
Which
surprise me.
I think it's kind of a coincidence that is also the state where you can go to be euthanized. So maybe you
Yes.
go there to see one final rental and off you go. Is there a number 3? Is there like a bronze medal brushed with greatness in your frame of reference? Somebody
Yeah. Well, I
behind?
mean, I have had a lot of them, but very few with accompanying photos. This is really a distant third. But this is me with Robbie the robot from Lost in Space.
Okay,
And
that's excellent. We've had no robot or AI related in any way brushes with greatness. This is excellent.
and next to him on the other side, Susan Olsen from the Brady Bunch.
I have
Wow.
a picture. I have a picture of me with Susan Olsen. Isn't that crazy?
Really?
She was out at the Mall of America promoting her book, and we had her on our radio show. So yes.
Well, see, there you go. She was briefly, like for a few episodes, because I think the Learning Channel was worried about having me front a brand new show. No one had ever had or probably has ever heard of me, and so they brought Susan Olsen in to front the first, I don't know, 4 or 5 with me. So
Cindy Brady herself.
What is the award that Neat Stuff won? The cable TV show that you're most closely associated with?
The Cable Ace Award, which was promptly discontinued right after that. Following year. I had such a fun time going to the Cable Ace Awards, which is like if you left the Emmys in the dryer for too long, you get the Cable Ace Awards. And but I rode there in a limo with like a bunch of Discovery executives who, I didn't know, and they weren't really talking to me. But the only other talent in the car was David Hartman.
Oh, sure.
Of GMA's morning show.
The first GMA host, right?
Yeah, and the Bold Ones. He
Yeah.
was one of the doctors on the Bold Ones.
heavily
And,
lined face and former baseball player. You got to know him through that, right?
It was like pulling a thorn from a lion's paw.
Yeah.
I in an uncomfortable effort to make some kind of contact with the only guy whose name I knew in the limo, I said, "Hey, didn't you play minor league baseball?" Well, that was it. We were like buddies the rest of the night.
And David Hartman's still alive, to your knowledge?
He
I
is,
believe
according to
he is.
Wikipedia.
I believe he is.
Okay.
Yes, he never calls, but as far as I know,
87 years old.
yeah, he was
Your
really a lovely
robot,
guy.
your robot brush with greatness reminds me of something that came to me a few days ago during the observance of the 50th anniversary of the Secretariat record-breaking win at the Belmont. I met in the year 1979. I have this traced back to either El Paso or Sunland Park, New Mexico. I met one of Secretariat's 600 children.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Stabled in either El Paso or Sunland Park, and I was led to his stall. The horse's name was Syntariot, S-Y-N, Harriet. And the poor bastard, none of these children,
Literally a
almost none of them,
bastard.
did anything, you know, award-winning in the worlds of breeding or running. And it's almost like I've just felt sorry for it. The horse looks back at me as if to say, would you please just move on? I don't have the will to live unless you can hang around if you know how you want to kill me. I'd be glad, to have you hang around for that. Otherwise, please move on, because I can't stand it that I never lived up to my father's exploits. But that was true of almost all 600 foals.
Yeah.
Think of the guys who paid, what do they pay? Like millions of dollars for a go with Secretariat?
See, in the late 70s, I don't think it was quite as sophisticated as the artificially drawn reproductive material of today.
Yeah.
I think what went on back then was just chaos in the freaking breeding shed.
Yeah.
Behind
Where,
barn doors.
One of
Oh,
there
I've seen
weren't
that.
even any sweatpants involved.
It's rough and tumble. And,
Oh, there's
there's
not a documentary, thank God, but there is a book about, I think it was, the horse was Stormcat, and what chaos erupts in the breeding shed, because they're rookies at this, and
Yeah.
the fear is that either mare or the stallion will be injured.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's even
So-
a guy who has to intervene at the critical moment for penetration, if I may.
Bob would
If there are
raise
any
his hand.
veterinarians watching, I hope they'll write in. How'd you like to be
What's
that
the
guy?
job title?
How'd you like to be that guy?
If
you think the horses might get injured.
Bob has always mentioned wanting to be put out to stud, so I guess I get it.
Executive commissioner of lubricants or something. I don't know.
And a sideboard, Bob, who's going to win the Derby? It's this weekend, right?
Yeah, I really have not studied it.
What?
A horse was, if I can use a breeding term here, pulled out today. But I'll have to
get back.
I'll have to study it. We don't have a horse track like Canterbury Park to even go to, that has. Well, I take it back. I guess there is simulcasting at Santa Anita, but there's another business just like Night of the Penguin type fraternization. It's just in a different era. What can I tell you? And
Those
so,
are the days, buddy.
But that was a fascinating thing. The reason I was there to look at this horse was because I worked for at that time, I think it was a year, of work for a magazine, a trade journal directed at trainers and owners of running quarter horses.
Oh,
So I was
cool.
there to see quarter horses, but many times the horses were hybrids. They were part thoroughbred and part quarter horse, and they had their
Okay.
own events and their own breeding interests, what have you. And so it can be very lucrative if either the stallion and or the mare do well at the races. But if not, it's a real crapshoot.
Now, are quarter horses, I mean, quarter horses are like sprinters, right? They can run a quarter mile in short order, but do they actually
Correct.
race a quarter mile? I mean, do they have races for quarter horses?
It's a sprint. It's a sprint. I think the farthest they go, boy, a mile or maybe 870 yards, something like that. I forget. It's been a
Oh,
long time.
oh, so
But it's the conformation of the animal is completely different. They're
yeah,
all muscled up. They're like sprinters on a track and field meet, right? You've seen those
right.
sprinters. They're
Compared to your 2-miler, or yeah,
exactly, yeah,
yeah,
compared to Roger Bannister, or,
right,
anyone who succeeded him in the marathon business. They're long and lanky, and
right,
these days from Kenya.
yeah, and a quarter horse. I mean, they're favored by ranchers, cowboys, right? They want
Correct.
good cow horses.
The breeding back then in the old days was called live cover. That meant an actual date, okay, flesh on flesh
Right.
type date. And
Yeah.
then came the collections era, where the reproductive
Uh,
material was collected manually by someone who, you just could not pay me enough. But
yeah. I mean, I've worked
and
at the
then
sewage treatment plant and a hide factory, but yeah, I couldn't.
You'd give it the old college try.
Yeah, I don't think so.
yeah, I'd have to be pretty drunk.
You would be pretty drunk.
I remember guys I went to high school with, they would get drunk and, volunteer at rodeos or tip cows or do
Yeah.
all sorts of unappetizing
Did
nonsense.
Did you
But
guys ever tip a cow? I just think that I don't get it.
Yeah, do they
yeah,
actually sleep? I guess they sleep standing up, right? And then you
Yeah.
just
also among my graduating class, a significant portion of the male contingent had apparently become quite adept at practices intimacy with the sheep. With
ah,
I knew he was going there.
where men are men and sheep are nervous.
yeah,
Yeah.
apparently texturally, there's very little to be distinguished between the human female and the lamb and sheep variety.
I guess at this point, I should be disclosing that I was a shepherd.
All right,
Yeah,
there
just
you go.
outside of River Falls, I was responsible
Full
for
disclosure.
100 head of sheep, and but that thought never occurred.
I didn't think we were going to veer into animal husbandry like we're doing today, but who knows?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, we're
actually,
starting to sound like the House of Representatives or something.
there wasn't just a husband involved. There was a mistress as well, but she
Oh.
was really hairy, apparently. The other centariate related thought that I had was, because this has been, oh my God, 24, 50, 45 years since this happened. Am I correct in assuming that the practice is still that when a horse has worn out his welcome, unless you're secretariat, you're going to get a royal send off, heart and hooves are going to go in an actual, elaborately marked off grave somewhere, a crypt such as a human might occupy.
Yeah.
But if not, I'm guessing that most of Secretariat's 600 children wound up as starters, shall we say, in France restaurants.
Yeah. And the hide of horses is much revered amongst tanners and, bootmakers and shoemakers.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Final fun fact about Secretariat. The experts have divined that he was so otherworldly in his abilities and his stamina and whatnot, and I'm sure this served him well in the breeding shed as well, is that his heart was almost 3 times the size of a normal horse. His heart weighed 22 pounds, and the conventional horse heart weighs 9 pounds.
Amazing.
So he was a freak of nature in that way. That's maybe part of the reason why during the Belmont, if you can imagine this happening, and obviously it is, you can Google it, each fraction was faster than the one before it during the Belmont.
Wow.
He would run the first fraction in a certain time. The second was faster than that. The third was faster than the second. They couldn't stop this guy. If this race happened today, they would go, "You over here, we need to smell your breath. We need to take some urine."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild?
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, because you wonder about I don't know what, the engineering or whatever of, any mammal's body that, a heart can get too big, obviously, in a large heart, with overly thick muscle in the walls can be a problem for humans, but
yeah,
that's amazing. Well,
thousands of the people who were on hand that day at the Belmont, because you really couldn't afford to bet on Secretariat. He was only going to pay 20 cents on a $2 win bet. That they saved their betting slips and framed them and whatnot and passed them along to subsequent generations and what have you. He was just that famous a freaking horse.
A collector's item. Yep.
He was the Brad Newman of the thoroughbred community, if you ask me. Brad Newman, just to bring you up to date, Jim, I don't think this came up while we met, but he is my favorite sexual athlete on the Pornhub platform.
Okay.
So that's
I watched the documentary recently about all that, Money Shot, on HBO.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen to that platform, that trend that I've never been to OnlyFans. My only connection to AI is what Kurt has shown me can be done. I mean, should we fear this turn into the impersonal that's going to cost so many jobs?
According to thousands of tech leaders, yes. Who are meeting with Congress and guys who know a lot more than I. That's the problem now, is that we all lead these lives where we're touched by all of these things, but none of us are even remotely capable of understanding them.
Yeah.
I mean, forget about the fact that nobody can tune up their car anymore.
Right.
AI, is going to be, reading your X-rays and I don't know, writing the next bestseller. Who knows? It is disquieting to me.
Car problems now are computer related. They're not engine related. No. Most of the people who take their cars in for repair, it's a computer thing.
Oh yeah. You got to get, and if you want to soup up your car, my brother was much more knowledgeable about cars than I am. I was thinking of at one time about getting a GTI R, which is a hot version of the GTI. And he said, "Oh, don't spend all that extra money for an R. Just get the GTI and then get it chipped."
Yeah.
I'm like, "What?" And he says, "Yeah, you just get a chip put in there and it'll, So forget about adjusting valves and all those things.
I'm trying to be as creative as possible with my adjustment to the new Tech 2.0 era, the third age of Edison. I've come up with just a brief list of 21st century reenactments of legendary literary events, except I've updated them to include tech, such as this one, the pivotal scene in Death of a Salesman. This is 21st century Death of a Salesman, where Willie Loman's wife is lecturing emotionally her son's Biff and Harold
Yeah.
about the unsung heroism of Willie Loman, and I think it would sound something like this. Your father, Willie Loman, was a great man, and attention must be what the hell is the... Hold on, I got to take this. Or how about this one? Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, 21st century edition. 7 ago, our forefathers brought forth on this continent. What now? I swear to God, I just want the record to show that I had to turn my ringer off, or I wouldn't be allowed to get through the freaking Gettysburg Address, the shortest of all presidential addresses. But someone doesn't seem to know the meaning of the word unsubscribe. So I'll continue now, if you don't mind. Where was I? A new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated. What in the hell is going on?
Nowadays,
So-
those famous speeches would probably be computer generated. So, it
Yeah.
might have not even
Yeah.
been old Honest
Now,
Abe.
see, that's another question. Will the writing done by the disembodied voice or whatever controls it, will it be any good? Because wasn't this funded by ideas from human beings? Didn't human beings build this gizmos? Aren't they only as good as the people who funded them with the concepts?
That's an open question.
Well, I think, yeah,
I'm
go
trying to
ahead.
think of the specific example recently where a computer was asked to like interpret a piece of poetry, and its interpretation, which took like 1 second or perhaps less, was actually quite insightful, according to the scholars who, asked it to, put the question to it, and saw things that they themselves hadn't seen about the author of the poem. Now, I wish I had the details on it. It's only vaguely recalled by me, but I remember my reaction was, this isn't just Erzat's poetry or Erzat's analysis. This is seemingly quality analysis that may even exceed that of actual literary scholars.
2007 writer's strike. The big sticking point was DVDs, and now it's streaming and AI. Can you foresee a world in which human writers, the same ones who entertain us with all these shows, all this great content in this golden age of TV writing, could be replaced by a machine?
Yeah. There are producers rubbing their hands together at the very thought of that. The money guys. I don't want that to be true. Does anyone want that to be true? Aside from the producers? I don't feel comfortable turning to the TV or anything, any form of human expression, having to ask myself, is this a person, giving me these insights into the human condition, or is this just artificial intelligence?
What's the old adage? You could have like a bunch of monkeys in a room typing, and eventually it'll be the great American novel. How close is that to this?
Well, it sort of seems like that, only it happens at a quantum pace.
Yeah.
And so all that random trying and failing with zeros and ones happens in seconds.
Exactly.
Man, I dodged a bullet. I am so glad that I failed to crack the code and get into that community. I was telling somebody the other day about my final meeting in the year 2007 at the Rose Cafe in Venice. It was a Sony producer, an indie producer, and an Emmy-winning actress. And so my son would never go into the profession. I made him come with me and observe and listen to the disrespect with which a writer is treated by the suits, so that he would never go near that kind of thing again. And fortunately, I was able to, have a nice lifestyle without prostituting myself, without, selling my soul to get a script made. And I got to say, in fairness, I got to enjoy a lot of stuff written by other people, superior writers, depending on the medium. I referred someone the other day to somebody who had not seen the scene Patty Chayefsky wrote for Network, where
Oh,
Ned Beatty is lecturing Peter Finch. I mean, that's just
yes.
classic. I can't imagine a machine that can write that. I really can't.
That's my setting too. I mean, same here. I just think now I mean, you might be able to get, somebody to write Who's Got the Butter for,
Yeah,
Fox sitcoms. But
right.
yeah, what for Network, I mean, come on, especially at the time, now Network almost seems like a quaint documentary. But at
Doesn't
the
it?
time that came out in whatever it was, 75, 76, that
Yeah.
was mind-blowing
Oh my God.
insights.
The cult leader, the black guy, the Maoist. God damn, give her the auxiliary clause. Yeah. Oh, it's fantastic.
Or the Holden's speech to Faye Dunaway's character,
Yeah.
you are a child of television, Diana.
Yeah.
Oh,
And I can't think of her name, but with one scene where she rebels against William Holden's attempts to cast her aside. I can't think of her name, Beatrice something. She won the supporting actress for that one scene with William Holden where he's trying to give her the slip.
yes.
He's telling her that
I'm your wife, damn it.
yeah.
That was fantastic. There were so many good speeches in that movie.
Yeah. Oh, he really excelled at that.
I like the
I've
snakes
got-
on the planes reference.
I'm sorry?
The snakes on the planes reference in that movie was awesome.
We'll return to that next week, I promise. And I will find a way to play the song Hurricane over these speakers so that it can be heard with my impersonation of Neil Young singing Snakes on a Plane. Now, I've got some final brushes with greatness to wrap up with that I need to burn off. Seen separately in Malibu jogging, two members of the Milwaukee Brewers who each live in Malibu, Christian Yelich and Ryan Braun. I've seen
Really?
them.
Well, we knew it wasn't going to be the 1982 Brew Crew. Those guys were built like beer. They ended up in a bar. Gorman Thomas.
That guy? Who? Yeah, with the big walrus mustache.
Yeah,
oh
they weren't going to be jogging anywhere.
No.
They were like a church softball team, those guys. Here's a question, because I'm looking at the name Charlie Rose here. I met Charlie Rose at the NBC affiliate in Fort Worth, where I met my second wife. And if you'll recall, the harassment allegations against Charlie Rose had to do with him undressing in front of people. And so I thought about this, and damned if he didn't undress in front of me.
No.
He was in his office, he closed the office doors, and he changed clothes in front of me. And I look back on that now and I'm just thinking how history would have been changed if somehow
you had sued him.
So Charlie Rose, he'll undress for anybody apparently. I'm sorry?
Who did he think he was? Brad Newman? Goodness.
Probably.
Let's see. Emilio Estevez, also in Malibu. He lives around the corner from his dad, Martin Sheen. I told you about Rod Stewart at Starbucks. Rodney Dangerfield, MGM Grand in Vegas, huh?
You reminded me of a Martin Sheen one.
Okay, good.
When I was at the university, I was just at College of St. Thomas. Martin Sheen narrated an Agent Orange documentary, and he showed up for the premiere of it at St. Thomas. I don't know why it was being held in St. Thomas, but I was assigned to cover it for the Aquin, our school newspaper. And somewhere I have a picture of me with Martin Sheen, but he was so mean to me and disrespectful. I think he was drunk on 3-2 beer, and the women were fawning on him, and he was digging it. And he used me to he used my back to sign an autograph for someone.
Yeah.
And
so what year was this?
Martin Sheen.
What year was this? Would you say?
80, 81.
Oh, right
Yeah,
around Apocalypse Now.
around Apocalypse Now, he was having his own dark night of the soul that he had to rebound from.
That's
And with
right.
the exception of Charlie, who, by the way, has seems to have straightened up to a certain degree, um, is arguably Martin Sheen is arguably the most beloved man in Malibu, a man of God, a member in good standing at Our Lady of Malibu Catholic Church,
Wow.
Right.
and so on and so forth. Yeah. So
Did
anyway,
that movie about hiking the Camino de la Santiago in Spain. I think it's called The Way or something like that.
yeah. Oh yeah, with Emilio Estevez. Yeah, that
Yeah.
got great reviews.
I wanted to like him, and I still like him, but yeah, he was not at the top of his game then.
I saw Steve Jordan, the Minnesota Vikings, at the Minnesota State Fair. Saw Rodney Dangerfield at the MGM Grand in a bathrobe
Whoa.
out at the pool.
Did anything
I
fall
Saw
out?
Jimmy. Check this out. Fall of 1976. There weren't even screens yet in Vegas sports books.
Ooh,
If you wanted to bet on a horse, you placed your wager, you sat down, and you listened to a radio play-by-play of the race.
gosh.
Obviously, if you wanted to see a sporting event on the weekend, you went to your room or a friend's home or what have you and watched it on TV. But there were no
Yeah.
screens. And in line with me to place a bet on a horse that day, keep in mind, this is 1976, and this may have been before or after Good Times, I don't know. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jimmy Walker.
Dynamite.
Mhm.
Dynamite.
Victor French, Highway to Heaven, saw him walking the halls of Caesar's Palace. I told you about the Lyndon Johnson separated birth, I assume that was on my campus.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Matthew Perry, I'm guessing this was before his colon burst. This was at the Pepperdine Starbucks.
Wow.
Gloria Allred and Jamie Lee Curtis at the Palisades CVS. Through WCT, the tennis tour, I met Howard Cosell. I saw Anthony Quinn play backgammon with Ely Nastasi. I met the
Ooh.
members of Chicago and the tennis writer Bud Collins.
Who was
And
the
then,
tennis player? Who was the tennis player who slapped his thighs like Macaulay Culkin in Home Alone? Remember, you told me he put cologne on his. You remember?
Oh, that would be Wojtek Fibak, the greatest player in the history of Poland, instructed me after we returned from a bordello in Monterrey, Mexico in 1977, that I should go directly to my room and sprinkle aqua velva on my genitals, that it would kill any germs that had accrued during our freestyle gallivanting.
I love that story.
All on the same bed, and I remember it as if it were yesterday. Wojtek turned to me while he too was writhing and said, "Bobby, you were like a rabbit." And what really gets me is why he needed to do that is beyond me, because this man was married to just Eva Fibak. Just Google her. Eva Fibak was just an angel.
Huh.
I mean, she could have been a movie star in Europe, and he felt he needed to do this. And then one time, this is another case of people just telling me shit for no reason. He says he's talking to me about his doubles partner Tom Ocker, the Flying Dutchman, and I found out one night why he's called the Flying Dutchman. I had a hotel room next to him, and he said, Wojciech Fibak says, the girls I fuck, I'm sorry, the girls Ocker fucks, I fuck also. Well, thanks for the update. I'll put that in my kiss and tell
Yeah.
about the tennis tour.
Noted.
A great guy, just as
Very
easygoing and down to earth, but ravenous, just ravenous. Like it's not enough that they, run up and down the court for 90 minutes to 2 hours per day. They still have energy for that kind of thing.
I would pay money
overnight.
to read. I would pay money to read that book, Bob, if you wrote that book.
Yeah.
It's one thing for baseball players to be ravenous because they don't get any exercise.
Right.
They're just, they're out in right field swatting gnats off their protective cup and loping in after 3 outs and, chewing and spitting and whatnot. So they need a release.
Yes.
Yeah.
But tennis players, I still don't get it.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, this is through our mutual friend, the late great Tim French. We visited the Polo Lounge at the Beverly Hills Hotel one year, and everyone there still remembered him after a 15-year absence. We were
Wow.
led into the Polo Lounge, and we were led past a table containing. I'm trying to do the math as to how old he would have been at the time. He was still, old, probably 60s, 70s. Warren Beatty and his two of his daughters with Annette Benning. Also in the same room were an NBA coach named Mike Dunleavy.
Oh
So
my.
that was quite the dinner time separated birth. Then
Yeah.
I've got Telly Savalas at the old Caesars pit playing blackjack with one of Elliot Ness's Untouchables, and Telly Savalas would let his stack of chips, his winnings. Most people would have like an even number of short stacks of chips. He let his grow precariously high. I don't know what kind of phallic point he was trying to make, but it would lean, and you're holding your breath.
Paging Dr.
Who
Freud.
loves you, baby?
Same old big pit at Caesars. I'm sure it's been remodeled or replaced by now. Red sateen jacket, his cigar billowing, his wheelchair hoisted so that he could reach his blackjack cards, Mr. Larry Flint.
Oh,
From Hustler magazine.
wow.
I'll bet you want to smell my finger, Larry Flint.
My favorite interview ever.
And then Red Fox at the Las Vegas Hilton. Let's see. Martin Short at Gelson's, inching along with his shopping cart. Jim Carrey, Beverly Hills Presbyterian Church. When he walked in, and the oxygen, you could hear it audibly sucked out of the room, I turned to my fellow parishioner and I said, he must be going through something. Anytime someone of Jim Carrey's stature comes into church, there's there's got to be a need for it, a reason for it.
Yes.
This is quite a long list, Bob. It's like you're stalking these people. And
then the final one is a soap opera icon of many years, also, well, actually in my own church, Westwood Presbyterian, near UCLA, and that would be Ms. Deidre Hall of Days of Our Lives.
Oh, yeah.
Hall. So with that, I mean, are there any other brushes that need to be discussed? And unless something comes to us between now and the next meeting?
The best ball player I ever met was Ernie Banks back at WCCO Radio. Got an autographed baseball from him. I was pretty happy about that.
Ernie Banks came in as a guest.
Yes.
Wow. I hung out with Buck O'Neill. I interviewed him once.
From the Negro Leagues?
I beg your pardon?
From the Negro Leagues?
Yeah. And I interviewed him once in St. Louis at a sports collecting convention. But then I ran into him just haphazardly, but not that long after that, at the Chicago airport. And we fell into conversation in his waiting area for his flight. And I got so, I just fell under his spell. He's such a lovely guy to talk to. I almost missed my flight. So, yeah, that was a great one. James Caan, I filled in for Brian Lambert, one and only time on one of his junkets to go out to see the movie Gardens of Stone, which featured James Caan, a young D.B. Sweeney in his first big film. And, she went out with Jack Nicholson, former Vogue model, Houston. Angelica
Houston,
who was really nice. She was like coltish. I expected her to be haughty and aloof, and she couldn't have been more charming. But James Caan, this is his first movie after a long absence from Hollywood. All these junketeers were asking him softball questions, and I said, well, you've been kind of conspicuous for your absence from the movie business. I've heard and read that it's because you had an ungovernable cocaine addiction.
Yeah.
Well,
how'd that go over?
Yeah.
Well, it offended the Junketeers, but
Yeah.
Caan handled it with great aplomb.
Yeah.
And then cut to the next day when it's all the turn of like the TV guys like Bill Carlson, who was there, who was helping me through the junket process, to do their interviews. I was riding the elevator down to leave, and I had my little bag, and I thought I was headed to the lobby, but it stopped at one of the in between floors. And who steps on the elevator with just the two of us? James Caan. And I just stood there like you do with anybody on an elevator and watched the numbers go down. And then he turned to me and he just said, "Going home, Jimmy?" And of course we have the same name. So, but
Yeah, cool.
I said, "Yeah, my work is done." And he said, "Well, have a good trip." And then he just got off the elevator at the second floor where the TV interviews were, because I thought he might, punch me out or something. He was like a Hollywood tough guy.
Perfect final flourish from our special guest today, James Leinfelder, Minneapolis, Minnesota. All glory to him and to Ukraine and to the Writers Guild of America until next week. So long for now.